for. That's not very competitive, but compared to the natural product shopper, looking at 32 servings with a 6 to 8 week shelf life, that was adequate for us. But it did create some problems. If we did want to order and take into account the seasonality, it would be really tough for us to plan ahead too far because of the shelf life issue.
You briefly touched on it, the ideal case size for retail. What did you find was the ideal size?
Well, it depends which retailer. We sold through conventional grocery, but we also, our main growth channel and the main growth channel for liquid water enhancers overall is the natural and specialty channel. Is there a particular channel that you'd be interested in me going into?
I think we would look at all channels.
Okay. So for grocery, the big concern for us, and this is not I mentioned seasonality. That's a big issue because you're going to have much higher velocity per store. I'll give you an example. But we launched at Publix, which is a pretty mainstream grocery retailer, and we had launched in all 2,000 of their stores. And we wanted to make sure that the retailer could avoid having to restock cases and get them all to fit on the shelf. And we were in a 12-count case, and we found that it was just too much for the retailer, and they were having some inefficiencies, having to break a case down and keep half a case in the stock room and then put a half case on the shelf. And so we decided that we would go to a more velocity-based case pack. And that's when we switched to 6-count. And the 6-count was perfect for Publix. It wasn't a fast mover. We launched it in the fall as well. But we found as the product caught on a bit more that we were able to sell through a case a week at 2,000 or so Publix stores. So that was grocery. We found at H-E-B and Kroger that 6-count case was too large for them. They would have preferred even a smaller. And one of the innovations we looked at was creating a kind of a sleeve that would hold the case would be stacked from in a single file line, and you'd have two abreast in the case. Does that make sense? And so we looked at having a 8-count case that would have two sleeves of 4. Are you picturing what that would look like?
Yeah.
So we'd have and the advantage, the reason we looked at that for H-E-B, and we decided not to do it for H-E-B and Kroger, is because we could use that little, it was a plastic, I'll call it a sleeve, but it was a holder that would hold all of the units in place, and that would help considerably with the shelf presence. And these little bottles are really hard to keep straight for retailers, and H-E-B specifically, they had requested that we look at some way to merchandise. Kroger is a little unique because they built in their in some stores, Harris Teeter stores. We went down and took a look at what they were doing innovation-wise there on the shelf. And at Kroger, they had actually created fixtures. And so that the sleeve that we had developed was no use there, but at certain other ones it was. We ended up developing instead of going with the sleeves, 4 units per sleeve and 8 units per case. We ended up developing just a merchandising unit, just a pop-up cardboard display unit that would be able to merchandise the product. And that was really important. The placement of the store and the ability of the co-packer to help us to be flexible, to find the exact place in the store and the right way to merchandise it so that it would show up well and really move. That was took a lot of experimenting, and I don't know that we came up with the right option, but those are some things you definitely want to consider.
What about lead times? So from when you would put in a purchase order to the co-packer to when it would be delivered to your DC with finished goods,